Hello, this is the second tutorial for Milestone 5. In our first tutorial, we covered how to establish a connection between MySQL and PHP using the MySQL connect function. In this tutorial, we'll focus on PHP functions for creating a random unique concert ID for users to gain entry to the concert, how to write user form field data to the MySQL database table, and how to set up the confirmation page with data from the user form fields, including their new concert ID that they will need to print out and bring with them to the concert to receive a ticket for entry. With the user ID credentials for MySQL working, you can then select which database has your database table that you want to connect into through MySQL. This is done with a use database command set to the database schema where your databases are stored. It's first a good idea to see what database schemas are even available in your MySQL data warehouse, though. We do this by going into SQL. We're already there. We got there with sudo MySQL. But then we can say show databases, followed by a semicolon. And we can see that the database is here that we need, which is it647 students, concerts, profiles. And we can confirm that that's the one that we're setting up against here in PHP through the MySQL select DB function, and it's set to that particular schema. That's where we expect to find our tables. So now that we can see them, we're going to want to go ahead and select this particular database so then we can see which tables are in that database. So first we want to say use it647 students, concerts, profiles, and then we want to show tables, followed by a semicolon, and that shows us that within the schema for it647 students, concerts, profiles are the following two tables, and the one that we want, the it647 students, concert, profiles table, which we can confirm from our PHP script that when we build this out, we do indeed want to insert data into the it647 students, concerts, profiles table. Okay. So now that we can see the tables, we may even want to see what's actually in these tables. So for that particular table, we'll do select star from it647 students concert profiles table, followed by a semicolon, and then it'll show us propagated data. Now your data may not look like this. This is just an instructor test, but your data, you may see the headers here, followed by at least one row of test data, and ultimately, if there's no data at all, it'll just say 0 rows. Now, in this case, we're going to be writing to this database table. We're going to do that here with a SQL query. Now this gives us a pretty good idea also of what the data structure looks like for our data table. For instance, if the columns are integers or alphanumeric or just strings or dates or dollar amounts or percentages or other, and what the header names are. These are the header names up here, which we also need for building out our PHP script. Now typically when working with clients in the real world, you'll initially ask for a data dictionary and data definitions before you engage in a project, which helps provide you with initial orientation and a clear understanding of what type of data you'll be working with. Now for this project, you'll write two primary PHP functions. The first will create a random unique ID for your row num field in the database table, and that's right here. Okay, and then your second function will insert your user's form field data into the database table. That's right here. Okay, and that's within your database schema, stored to your data warehouse in MySQL. And then your confirmation HTML that gets displayed back to the end user in the form of a generic web template will be scripted within the PHP file, but after the PHP closure tag, which is right there. See, PHP started here, and the designated closes here, and then we can integrate our HTML logic, but we can also even add additional PHP scripts, like subscripts. So let's talk about that first function. So this first function that creates the random unique ID for users to get into the concert. The first function is a for each loop. This loop uses an integers pattern and then applies that defined pattern to select a value from 0 to 10 randomized. Okay, and we want up to 10 numbers, and so we set our for each loop to increment 10 times and then stop. And we place all these incremented values into a variable called row ID. We'll then write the data stored in row ID to the database, right here, row ID, table, to the database table, along with the user's submitted first name, last name, and their phone number. Now this is all done with this SQL query, but instead of writing the query on the server through a terminal window command line interface, or even with a separate platform you haven't seen in this classroom but are used pretty regularly out in the field by businesses, it's called MySQL Workbench platform, we're instead going to write the query right here in PHP, and we're going to store that all within a variable called SQL, right here. The query is insert into the name of the table, followed by the table header names, which are these right here, table header names, in that order, and then the values that are provided to us by the user as they submitted them into the form fields through our form post method, which was designated as one of the form fields was first name, one of them was last name, and one of them was phone number. So it has to match what we set in our HTML and our registration.html. Let's open that up real quick. Whenever we initially set up our form, and we can see that right here, name is first name. Remember our form action opens up the regform.php using the post method, and then when users submit, it submits the first name, last name, and phone number. So those are the variables that we've captured right here through that post method, and said we want to send those and insert those into our table, okay, through our database connection to this schema where that table resides within MySQL through this particular authenticated credentialed user access. Okay, and then when we're done with that, we can go ahead and close our MySQL connection and then close our PHP. Then we can write our confirmation page markup, which will be displayed to the user after the data is successfully posted to the database table and after the random generated ID is ready for handoff to the user to gain entry into the concert. Notice that we're now able to recall data from the database table as well, right here. And we're telling a user basically, hey, congratulations, you're done. This is just a quick confirmation, and here's your new ID that you need, and here's the information that was received. And what we're doing is we're pulling data that's already been stored in these variables, which was done right up here. We basically just stored that post data from the form fields into these variables so we could reuse it again as output in the confirmation page template that users see whenever they render this page after they've submitted the form fields successfully. Okay. Last, we include the ability for users to print the page from a button. This is done with a JavaScript on-click event. So we say input type equals button, and then on-click equals window.print. Okay, that completes this tutorial on working with PHP and MySQL to manage your registration form data and confirmation page with Concert Entry ID.